Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. Jersey Joe Archino back here. And after Super Bowl 50, Peyton Manning has obviously been a focal point of everyone talking, everybody trying to decide what he's going to do with his future, but more importantly, where he ranks on the all-time ranks. I think we all really were holding our breath until he won this one to really pick this debate up again. But I mean, now you look at him, he stands at 2-2 in Super Bowl history. But, you know, it's difficult to make this argument that Peyton Manning is the greatest of all time, but I do think the argument can be made. Again, it's difficult, but if you want to make the argument, there are points that you can clearly look at, and I think you have some substance with them. Number one, I think you have to look at this. He's the only quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl with two different franchises. That statement right there means a whole lot. I mean, it is so extraordinarily difficult to get to the Super Bowl alone in this league. The Buffalo Bills got to 4 in a row. They lost all 4. It is so difficult to get there and win. It is the hardest thing to do, I think, in American professional sports, is winning the Super Bowl, because, you never know what's going to happen in that one game. You have no other chances. It's you give it your best then, and you don't know what's going to, and after that, you just have to wait and see. But I think you look at the history of the league and the fact that Peyton's the only one who has ever been able to win a Super Bowl with two different franchises clearly sets him alone in that regard. And the other thing you have to take into account is he's been to 4 Super Bowls. He's won 2, but in all 4 Super Bowls, he brought a different coach. He's the only player in NFL history to also bring a different coach in his 4 Super Bowls. Again, that shows you right there. We all know what the conversation is. It's between Montana, it's between Brady, and it's between Manning. And the thing that Manning and that Brady and Montana had always by their side was one coach. One coach for those guys. Belichick with Brady, Walsh with Montana. They always had the consistency of having one guy in their ear, one guy telling them what to do. They never had to adjust because those were the guys. They built the chemistry. They knew what it was. Peyton Manning had to constantly be learning and doing things with a new guy. With a new guy is a new style, is a new way of doing things. Peyton always had to learn to mesh and to do things with a new guy, and that is very difficult to do. He brought 4 different coaches with 4 different philosophies and 4 different ways of doing things to Super Bowls, and he won 2 of them. Now, that right there, I think if you're trying to make the argument, certainly helps your argument. Brady always had the stability on his side of having the same players, having the same coaches. Same thing with Montana, but not Manning. That is a difficult jump and something that really he only had to deal with. And certainly I think it's something that helps his benefit if you're trying to make this argument. I think another thing that you certainly have to look at, though, is the 200 wins. I mean, after winning Super Bowl 50, the only quarterback in NFL history to win 200 games as a starter, that right there says so much once again about Peyton Manning and what he has meant to this game. Now, people will try to hold the losses against Peyton Manning, and people will always try to make the case that, he wasn't at his best always in the playoffs. And, that is something that is hard to defend Peyton against. I mean, you look at Brady compared to Peyton, who is always the one he'll be compared to the most. Brady is 22-9 in the playoffs. Peyton is 14-13, but Brady does have those 2 Super Bowl losses also against the New York Giants. But I think, what it comes down to in Super Bowls is the loss is never on one guy. It's just not. You don't, even though Peyton Manning didn't play his best football in the 2 Super Bowls that they lost, you don't lose because of one player. The Super Bowl is won by the better team in all the phases. When Peyton lost to the Seattle Seahawks, it wasn't just a loss because Peyton Manning didn't play well. It was a loss because the Seahawks had better special teams, the Seahawks had the better defense, and the Seahawks had the better offense that day. That's what it comes down to in Super Bowls. It's taking the best team with the best parts, and the best team in all the phases wins. That's what happens. The best team in all the phases wins. And I think at some points in Peyton's career, he didn't always have as good of a cast as the Brady and as the guys like Montana had. I mean, let's look at Montana had some of the greatest players of all time around him. I mean, on the defensive side of the football, Ronnie Lott. I mean, on the offensive side of the football, he had the greatest receiver of all time in Jerry Rice. He had consistent running games. I mean, he had the total package. Bill Walsh, was famous for patenting the quote, 250 yards passing, 150 yards rushing. That's a perfect football game. But they were constantly able to do that, and that philosophy was able to be shaped because they had all the pieces. They had such an effective roster of talent, and they had stability. When you put stability with the talent, it's very difficult to beat. It's very difficult to stop. It's something that Brady has also had. Now, maybe Brady hasn't always had the same offensive talent that Manning has had, but certainly when it comes to the defensive side of the football, Brady has had some incredible defense. I mean, never forget, the first 3 Super Bowls that Tom Brady won with. Those were some outstanding defenses with Teddy Bruschi, some of those other players that they had. I mean, man, those were some really, really good defenses. And we know what Bill Belichick does coaching those defenses up. What those guys had is stability on top of talent. When you put stability on top of talent, you're going to win a lot of things. And Peyton Manning, I don't think always had those things. Peyton Manning, again, you go back to the point. 4 different coaches during the 4 different Super Bowls. Tony Dungy, he won one with. Jim Caldwell, he lost one with. John Fox, he lost one with. And Gary Kubiak, most recently, he won one with. But the one he lost to the New Orleans Saints, did Peyton really have the stability on top of talent? It was the year after Tony Dungy left, Jim Caldwell's first season. They get to the Super Bowl. They have a tremendous season, but you know what? In that game, I think you saw the Saints had the better in all the phases. Their special teams were better. Their defense was better. It was a close game for the most part, but I think they were outcoached in that game as well by Sean Payton. Sean Payton clearly outcoached Jim Caldwell in that game, and Jim Caldwell's kind of status as a great NFL coach is still to be determined right now. John Fox has done a lot of great things, but it's the same thing with John Fox. We saw in the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks how badly that Broncos defense got exposed as the season went on. I mean, it was the number 1 offense in the league that season, but they certainly did not have a defense that was capable of backing them up in big moments, and they clearly got exposed in the bigger games as the season went further and further. I really think what it comes down to is what makes Peyton different from those other guys. And what makes Peyton different from those other guys is that he has Super Bowl titles with different franchises and different coaches with those franchises. He has taken 4 different coaches who haven't always had stability on top of talent and brought them to the Super Bowl. Those things set Peyton Manning alone when it comes to trying to rank him all time. Now, is he the greatest quarterback of all time? That is something that is always going to be subject for debate. Again, I don't know how I would answer that question. I would probably say, to me, you probably have to say Montana and Brady are you have a little bit of an easier time arguing that they are. But, again, the argument can be made for Peyton Manning. To me, I'm extremely impressed, always, that he was able to win 2 Super Bowls with 2 franchises. He's the only guy to ever do it. And whenever I look at him and I try to separate him from Brady and Montana, I think, could Brady have done what Manning did, winning a 2nd Super Bowl with a different franchise, taking different coaches to the Super Bowl? Could Montana have done it with all that without all that talent around him? A lot of times in the Super Bowl, it comes down to being hot, being in the right place at the right time. You need some luck. You need some great talent around you. And I don't know if Peyton's always had those same advantages that the other guys have. When you put it all together and you think about it logically, the case can be made that Peyton Manning is the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't think anyone disputes he's the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, but sometimes his postseason play sometimes takes him down a knock. But you know what? In the postseason, the better collective teams always come forth. And I don't think Peyton's always had the better collective team. He's taken 4 teams to the Super Bowl, 4 different coaches. That right there sets him alone. And if you want to make the argument he's the greatest of all time, I think that argument absolutely can be made. But let me know your thoughts on that one. Is Peyton Manning the greatest quarterback of all time? Is it Brady? Is it Montana? All opinions are valid. All opinions I definitely want to read. But let me know. And until next time, Jersey Joe Archino here with the Sports Vault. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino, on Instagram, Jersey_Joe_Archino. And we'll see you folks next time.